Hello, people,
Hello, everybody.
friends, and acquaintances, avid followers of the conversations with the Ask the Pool Guy
And that's the Pool Girl team.
podcast. Yeah.
Mhm.
Welcome.
Another beautiful day. Another conversation to have.
I feel like you had something on your mind today.
I did. We'll get into it. Let's ease into that.
Okay.
I think we should reflect first on the last few days, maybe the party yesterday that we held.
Yes.
And that will lead into specifically what I had on my mind. So,
Okay. Well, this week we hit a couple of milestones. We got water in a swimming pool,
that
a
was
liner
huge.
and water. That was very exciting. We decided to have an open house at our Once Upon a Time pool, which is really funny because we had talked about doing it and then time just was going by so quickly that I almost forgot to ask the homeowners if we could hold it there. So we were all at Lazy River last weekend to celebrate homeowner Bud's birthday, and they were nice enough, Bud and Vera, to allow us to invite a few of our friends and legendary Owners Club members to come out and see the pool. So Kevin and Lori were at that pool, and I had talked with each of them individually about having an open house at their pool yesterday, Saturday. And they were both in the pool, so then I started talking about this open house event that we were throwing at their pool, and they hadn't talked to each other after I had talked to them each individually. And the looks on their faces were priceless when I start talking about this thing out loud, and they hadn't mentioned to the other one that they had each said, yeah, that would be fine. So that was kind of an endearing moment that I got to be a part of. So yeah, they were there most of the party. Well, we planned it from 10 to 1. We were going to invite drop-in style any of our friends, acquaintances that hadn't seen it yet, as well as have it be a time that people who haven't seen one of our projects in person but are inquiring about a swimming pool could come and take a look. So Kevin and Lori were there for the allotted time that we thought the open house was going to go for.
Wow.
And then they left because of another commitment, and they're like, yeah, stay, enjoy yourselves.
And we did.
So we did.
So we stayed for quite a while.
So glad they left Leonie in charge.
Leonie is their foreign exchange student from Germany who's 15 years old, 16 years old.
She was a great hostess.
She stayed at the other end of the pool and did whatever. She had a friend
fun.
over and they stayed busy.
It was really fun.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
So a couple things happened there that I think are worth mentioning. But before we do that, let's go the week before to Saturday to Bud's party.
Okay.
It was really fascinating to me to watch several of our homeowners interacting that way. They were all swimming together. They all have their own unique projects, and they all are very different. Mm-hmm. There's no comparison to any one of them. They're all very different, all in their style. And here they are swimming together and sort of playing. I thought that was that was a bit humbling and eye-opening to me. But another thing that came up with that was way back, pre you involved in the pool company, we had talked about how could we get people together. And we were going to do like pool school / whatever at the office when we had the place in Farmington. And then that didn't make a whole lot of sense because most of these people would be fairly seasoned with their pool. But we wanted to create a bit of that community. But I always had a fear. Not so much anymore, but at that time, we're more of a volume builder, so we're building a lot of projects, a lot of things. And there's always this concern of, and I'm going to bet that most pool company owners would have this fear, is that what happens when one starts talking to the other one about something that's not right or something that's not working or something. There was this really weird sense of, it gave the opportunity. I was able to isolate them all, so they're all separate. They didn't know what's supposed to be right or wrong. It's not like we were making blatant errors and unsafe things, but there was this sense of if they got together, they could almost commiserate. You know, sometimes it takes too long. It takes a long time. Sometimes we had really bad weather. And especially as a volume guy, when you have to start them as fast as you can, no matter if you're finishing them or not. And so there was this hesitation, I mean, with that, and that kind of put the brakes on that. I didn't want people. This is kind of where I come from to where I am. A very drastic place where, as much as I wanted to build community around what we did, I had all kinds of fears around our business practices of isolating, keeping people separate. Like, but my project only took 2 weeks. Why did yours take a month and a half? Well, I have this. Well, what, and so it was all of that. Yeah. And there was apprehension, and I didn't know. I certainly didn't have the skills to handle it at the time. But I thought that was really interesting then to sit here and witness these people enjoying each other's projects and talking in languages like they're proud of each other, and not just, well, mine is better than yours, or there's no ego there. It was really kind of a cool.
Yeah, they all love seeing what we're up to now after their project has been built. They're always intrigued with what we can do, and they're invested in our team and our well-being. Not just that we're a company that sticks around, but like Karen, how's Karen doing? Is she back to normal after her surgery? Like last time I saw her, she was, it looked like she was having a little trouble walking, and so they care. And the other interesting thing is your fear from before, because we're different. We don't sell pools anymore. No. We share this experience with these homeowners. Everybody that was at Lazy River could have brought up something that's on the to-do list at each of their projects, because each project continues as the pool ages. They age well. However, there's always these things that crop up, and sometimes it's easier to get to than others. And, so they each have something they're kind of waiting for us to come back for. But it's not waiting in terms of a complaint
or grumbling or
because
angry.
They're looking forward to seeing us out at their house, and they love and care about us, and they know that we love and care about them. And like the ones that we're currently building, there's no rush. You don't have to be finished with everything on a certain timetable, because we want to see what happens. Let's go ahead and figure out how to put that barky puppy outside.
Okay,
let's take a pause. Okay. All right, back to where I was.
So back to where you were.
Everybody loves us, and they are invested in us. They want us to be successful. We want their pools to be amazing, but more than the pool being amazing, we want them to be having a good time.
An amazing experience
with their pool.
So, which goes back to where I originally started with that about trying to build the club. The one thing that we did do, again, I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but as part of that process of how could we do that, let's let them understand they're a little bit exclusive to us because we built for them, and we did permanent laminated discount cards. So if they came into our store, it was an automatic 10, 12, 15%, whatever it was, and we had their names on them, and they were laminated. And this is like your permanent discount card when you come to the store. So that was those early attempts to build the tribe. But my challenge with the tribe was my own insecurities and fears about the stuff that the people today, there are things that have to be done or rebuilt, and years later things break and have to be fixed, and it's not like we build something they can just hire anyone to fix. It's not pool equipment, it's usually all the other cool and fun things that we do around the pool. So at that time, for sure, I had this apprehension around getting people together. It was a very different level of client. It was a very different process and a very different way of being. But this was just magical. I mean, we've had each of our clients come to other pools and stuff. That was not unique and new, much like the open house when we did the last time at Once Upon a Time. Okay, distraction number 2 out of the way, but that's okay. Who cares? Anyway, So it was amazing, and again, it wasn't that it's new that we've had people come to our things, because when we did the open house or the reveal for Once Upon a Time, we had a different group, which was really interesting, a different group of our
Of our pool
legendary
people,
owners. Yeah, so that was really kind of cool as well. But it is, it's vulnerable for me as well. As you well know, I take things really personally, and seeing them all together, while I love it, there's those times where I'm, just wondering, like, what are they thinking? Because again, they're in this now it's what's become a fairly exclusive club, and they've paid us an awful lot of money to do stuff. Yep, and so pretty rewarding to be able to see that and to witness these really amazing people all being and awesome and sharing and
people and
with each other and inviting each other over.
And the kids
come
are
swimming
at
here anytime.
school. Could we bring them over to see it? You bet. And then even so, Bud didn't make it to the Once Upon a Time launch party, but he was able to stop in yesterday at the open house because he wanted to see how it had turned out, because he saw it during the process.
And he drove 45 minutes one way to do it. It's not like it was around the corner.
He said, you guys can have a party at our place anytime. Which, that's awesome, because it's a really cool group of people. Everybody that we hang out with would go out of their way to help. Just say what you need, and everybody is helpful and genuinely caring about one another. You get to talk about things that aren't the color of the drapes
that matter.
You get to talk about things that matter and moments that matter, and that's a magical.
Well, we've had that conversation many times, I think, on here, regarding wanting it to be an experience, and that we each grow as human beings, and let's help each other grow as human beings, and getting people together like that helps us grow. And then we're all sort of growing in life together. And I think that's really important and really cool. Well, so that's Bud's, and Once Upon a Time then is the following weekend. Well, actually, theirs was first. We did Once Upon a Time launch party, which Bud and Vera missed their Lazy River. Then Lazy River, Bud had his birthday party, so we invited ourselves and some of our friends. And then yesterday, we went back to Once Upon a Time, and we're doing this open house for the rest of our friends that hadn't been able to get there, and then also for any clients that might want to come and see it.
Well, at the Once Upon a Time launch, I was talking with Kevin, and Kevin had met a couple of the other legendary families that had come to that, and he said, like, we should just do, like a legendary tour and stop at a bunch of these different pools. And I had said, each one is so different, and it's interesting because we use the same materials. We use bluestone, we use this patio, we use liners, yet everyone has such a different look, feel, flavor, environment, and there's different things to focus on each one. And Kevin said, like everybody that he's encountered is just so proud of their experience, their pool that reflects what they were looking for, and how they really do want to share it with each other in a genuine, like, come feel what it feels like to be in my yard. Not, compare me with anything, but I would just like to invite you to come and experience what I'm thankful for experiencing.
And that gets to that club mentality as well. It's not like, ooh, I'll stay here till you come over and see mine, and then you'll go on to see someone else's. It's as much about, well, I want to see all the others as much as I want you to see mine. It's a very different feeling and a different experience. And we even talked, Kevin's friend showed up there yesterday, and he was talking about, well, it's almost like a pub crawl, and you have a drink here and have whatever. And I said, we've talked about doing a party bus. Oh, I need to have a ticket to that. I better get invited or whatever. And so it's that idea that let's celebrate all of this. And the common thread is us, and they love us and we love them. They're getting to know each other, but the common thread is they care about who we are. We're talking swimming pools. We're talking about a business.
Yeah.
We're talking about doing business to make money, to have a life and whatever, and yet our life is this.
And we're talking about
And we're in the
pools
center.
from 7,
8 years
eight
ago.
years ago, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 4
Yeah.
years ago, 3 years
Yeah.
ago. Like,
You know, it is that whole spectrum. When you look
Yeah.
at it, there are people from every one of those years involved in this group.
we even invited someone that you built a pool for 20 plus years ago that was thinking about building a new pool. And I know that they don't want the scope of what we do, but I thought it would be cool
Invite them
to
anyway to
invite
see.
them to come out and see it. So that would have also been really interesting.
Well, and I think it opens up the door to a whole nother, and we talk about this a lot, a whole nother way of doing business.
Have you paid attention to how they introduce themselves to each other, or how
yes.
I introduce if I'm so Kevin, who lives here at Once Upon a Time, meet tikis and palm trees, or meet minor falls.
They use the name of their
use
project.
the name of their project, or this is the steampunk moose, or like that.
Or this
is
is
just
Lazy River.
So cute, like so awesome. And as random as it seems, I know that when we've been talking about the growth of our company, I very much remember you and I having a conversation about, you know, each pool takes on its own flavor. How do we explain theming? And then we started naming them. And then the names translate into this, you're part of this legendary owners club. And then that translates into, that's almost how you introduce yourself to each other. And that was it's very conscious and very random, because the names choose themselves. It's not like we name it and then we build it. We often have to pull out.
It comes out of
some
the building
that
of it. The name shows up.
information on what it is. Yeah.
Well, another thing that was really interesting yesterday was when Bud was there. Now, Bud has Sandy mentioned that the two projects, Once Upon a Time and Lazy River, are the bookends of sort of the pinnacle of what we've done. One with really macro detail in terms of size and scope, one with really micro detail. Bud's pool is the macro detail. It's a much larger space that we had to fill with awesomeness. And he had mentioned that when he was first at Once Upon a Time when we were building it, it seemed bigger because he had no perspective until his yard started developing.
Yeah.
But what he did say to me, which I found to be truly amazing, he said, pictures don't do this justice. He said, you really have to be here to see this. Now, this is a guy who looks at his yard every day, which is massively, expansively cool.
Yeah.
And
with
yet,
so many fun
so many fun details. And yet he's recognizing that even the pictures that he's witnessed online, because our people pay attention to what we're doing, but he was saying that you can't, I couldn't fathom, you can't fathom this, that you can't get it in a picture.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, that was really cool, because everybody's going to say that about his pool project from here to the end of time.
Yeah.
Is that you can't, there's no picture from any one angle that gives you any sense of what any one of these projects is.
Yeah.
It's part of this immersion. You have to be in it.
To be there.
He even said that, you know what else he said too, then we went down to the lower level and there's the wall and the elephant spitting water, and water's coming over the spillway and all the water's coming down. And he said he couldn't quite put it into words, but he was trying to say he got it, but he said there's a feel. There's a feel about it. And you'd have to be here to get that feel or something. And he was using it's the immersion experience. What he was saying was he was trying to put into words his feelings.
Yeah.
That when you're immersed in it, and now there's this thing above you, and it's tall. I mean, there's a lot going on there. You're not you're looking up at everything because of the size of that drop elevation.
I sat on one of the thrones yesterday for the first time. I did, yeah. Normally when you're going down the slide, you're like in and out. And I had just gotten in the lower pool, and I went, and I'm like, I'm gonna sit on a throne, see what this feels like. You have to feel it.
Yeah.
You just have to.
You kind of have to go ahead and do it. And there's a lot of those little things. So then, let's talk Bud again. Friday, we were there shooting his slide from the upper, above so the slide starts above the cave that the river flows through.
How many feet long is the slide?
I'm gonna have to measure it to find out
You're
the final.
gonna have to make
I
sure
know.
it's longer than any that Vera
it
has
is.
seen on TV.
We
Sure
pretty
it
much
is.
have that figured out. Yes.
But, yeah.
But anyway, we were there shooting it, and Bud and I were chatting afterwards, and he made a comment that he's continually seeing things that he didn't see before, and he mentioned the fish. The fish paintings. Sandy had done a bunch of these really cool fish paintings that we mounted on the walls and stuff. And when they first go up, I guess you're just not thinking about it, but at least he wasn't. But then the more he looked and the more he kind of relaxed into it, how it all makes sense. And he talked about how it makes sense and how he continues to see things. And I said, well, that's our intent, is to hide those little Easter eggs that you'll eventually see. And we don't want you to find them all right now. We want you to be able to, over time, go, where did that come from? Where is this? And that was really cool because it was witnessing out loud how we talk.
Yeah.
What he was saying was the exact thing that was happening to him, and we've talked about making sure that people have that experience all the time. That doesn't just happen willy-nilly. We've had to do that. We've had to orchestrate that, and sometimes it's organic, sometimes it's very planned out. And yet, so that was, again, a really cool experience with that.
And we'd really like to go into a yard when we're working, and we'd like to put things up. And if you see us put things up or not, that's okay. But then later, we want you to go like, how long has that been here? Or where did that come from? Or like maybe in the case of Once Upon a Time, some of those vignettes, like the vignettes have been there. They've ducked down, they've looked in them time and time again. And then as we either mention more of the motivation behind them, or they
There's
actually get a clearer
them.
look, then they're like, how long has that been there? How long has the picture been on the side of the house that reflects in the mirror? I'm not going to walk around and tell you about all those things. None of us are. You need to discover them. And then maybe if you discover it, then we'll mention more of the story behind it.
Jen McClure was there yesterday. Jen McClure was there yesterday, and I said, you really should, because during the day, those don't pop as much as they do at night because they're lit all very differently. I said, so I was explaining that. I said, but you should really look closely. And there's some crazy amounts of cool detail, and I pointed out some of the things, and I pointed about the piece of wood that came off their house that they, and stuff like that, and she was just kind of in awe that there was all these little things, and there's literally little coffee cups that are, because they own a coffee shop chain.
A coffee chain.
And there's these little mugs that are literally smaller than the tip of my
like
pinky.
A centimeter tall.
They're teeny tiny little, and yet they have names on them. They have, and so it was all those little fine details that are things that people will discover for a long time, because unless you stare at one little box for the longest time, you'll miss a lot of that nuance that you made sure was in there.
Well, when this project started, number one, we didn't know there would be boxes there.
No.
Number two, I didn't know that I would have anything to do with them. And then as we were talking about it and the need for these, I'm like, I can work on those. And I, at that point, thought I would just
mock up a few
help
little
out
things.
and give some ideas. And then it became clear I had been training for that mission
It took on a life of its own too, though.
It really did.
Well, and we didn't know that was just an inspiration out of literally thin air. That as we had to block up these walls for the bar, so that would work out right, and then a wall over here and a retaining wall over here. And as we're blocking them up, it was just like this natural. Well, geez, what if we did like little scenery boxes, shadow boxes? And so as we were building, we started building these boxes and then mudding the block around them, so they just became literally a cinder block, a space for cinder block, with no anticipation of what they'd be, other than my initial thought would be a bunch of little Disney characters or something, and we just kind of plop them in there and they'd be really cool. But then, of course, they got framed in, they got painted, and then all these little sayings got painted, and they became more real. Like, what could these be? And then you just sort of took over. And I remember coming back to the office, and there's all these, everywhere sitting were these mocked up. What if we put this together, and this together, and this together, and what it would look like, and then it just snowballed from there into
and then figured out
how do we add lighting to all of them? How do we?
To the
and all the
point
details
where,
of the family.
like in the every box is my favorite. In the Little Mermaid box, there's scenes from family photos from a wedding with a miniature replica of the destination tree that was at their daughter's wedding. And then in the Mary Poppins box, you can see Mary Poppins during the day. But then at night, it's the coffee shop, and there's
the inside of the coffee shop
there's
lights
family
up
photos on
the
the
walls.
wall of the coffee shop, along with the logo of the coffee company on all the seats, and the original replicas of Kevin's parents who founded the coffee shop experience. Their mugs are in this storefront, which you've got to spend a lot of time to see that.
So each vignette is about this long by about that tall. Picture a cinder block, 8 inches
Like
by 16 inches.
6 inches.
Yep, so it's about 6 or 7 inches, 6
Yeah.
inches tall by the time we built out the box.
By about 14 or 16.
And so now she's talking that, and now picture a row of buildings inside there, facades of buildings with Mary Poppins in front of it. So now we have this much space inside this coffee shop, which is like literally my 2 hands width total of space, and in that is pictures of the family, little coffee mugs with the parents' names on them, and so we're not talking like building big things, we're talking microscopic.
Oh, and the building has an awning, a custom built awning with the logo of the coffee shop on it. And in the background of one of the buildings is the coffee shop on their walls at the actual coffee shop. So there's a replica of the coffee words that they have at the coffee shops. So yeah, that was really, really fun for me. I liked it.
And there's 13, I think we figured out there's 13 total vignettes there.
Yeah.
There's one inside the grotto, inside the cave. There's 2 on the outside of that building, and then there's 2 on this wall, 2 on this wall, a whole bunch surrounding the bar.
Yeah.
So
I forget Nemo. Finding Nemo is the first one that we actually put together in there. Yeah. Or first or second.
First or second. I had done the Main Street Disney Main Street one.
Yeah.
But I don't know that one was really done either when we did Nemo, but because we were busy building the inside of the So inside the cave, talk about that Nemo, Finding Nemo, is we took a porthole, built a space, carved concrete all the way around it, so there's a space inside there with wire sticking in to put lighting in it, and you literally look through a porthole into this space in the wall, and then poured right into the concrete. It's a scene of an underwater scene of Nemo.
That has like some black light. You have to look very carefully because you're in the grotto, and then it's dark, and then there's black light, and there's all these glow. Like
Jamie, my niece Jamie, is here from up north, and they were in there, and she thought the swizzle stick were the coolest things. They look like seaweed, and that's what they sort of glow in the dark because we used these miniature UV light, literally UV light diodes to kind of glow inside there, and it makes those swizzle sticks, I think is what you used, makes them sort of glow, and it's almost like seaweed. It's kind of, it almost looks like it's waving in the
water. Cool scene.
She said she loved that.
You can find Nemo and a few of the characters if you take your time and look real carefully.
Is there a dwarf in there? Maybe. There might even be a dwarf in that one.
You know what?
I think there is.
I think for a time we had this where's the dwarf in each vignette idea, and we didn't carry that through to all of them. However, I do believe that you're right.
I think that underwater one might have a dwarf in it.
Have a dwarf underwater.
So look for it.
That one's a fun one.
Anyway, so that's kind of getting back to this idea of how do we live life differently, and how do we experience it with all these people that we've grown to really love and care about, and that leads to...
They're people that I would want to hang out with in my spare time. Like, aside from a working relationship, working for them or with them, they're just genuinely cool people.
Awesome, cool people.
Yeah.
I was just telling someone yesterday, I think it was yesterday, that I was telling them at the event that, I'm the corny pool guy that make sure I tell people on that first appointment, because we know that if I go on an appointment, they've already checked off most of the boxes of they're really cool people. But I tell people that if I can't fall in love with you, if I can't love you more today than I do, or you tomorrow more than I do today, then I don't want to do business. And this is just sort of that physical proof of that, is that you can love what you're doing and love who you're with and love the experience and let it grow and be something. And that's what's really amazing about this, and that 99.999% of the pool company owners out there aren't going to get this. I get that. But you know what? There's a couple.
Yeah.
There's a couple out there that just need someone to say it's okay. It's okay to fall in love with your customer. It's okay to do things in a very different way. It's okay to care about what you do enough that it becomes your lifestyle, not your job. It's okay to immerse yourself into something that makes you happy every single day. It's okay. Because you know what? The world doesn't tell them that. The world tells them profit, bottom line, cut your cost, beat your suppliers up for the best price that you can get, cut corners wherever you can safely.
And it's okay if you give them a price and then you decide you need to do something because the project needs it. It's okay just to do that and not do change orders and not
get
expect
paid for it
to figure out the price to the penny.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a yummier way of living.
When you get into the world of giving and sharing an experience instead of selling a pool, you made the comment earlier that we don't sell pools. No, but what we do is we intentionally create an experience for the homeowner to have. And when you start living that way, you don't do everything based on dollars. Granted, it's business and you have to watch your dollars here and there for sure. Mm-hmm. But if that's your only focus, then you're going to miss the most delicious part of what we do, which is creating happiness and good times. And, even Kevin yesterday saying, I got this outdoor chess set and, could we paint it on and I'm like, Karen, come here, I got a job for you. Yeah. Let's saw cut the shape and put it in there instead of going, well, it's going to take me, 7 hours and 33 minutes.
Outdoor chess sets. Yeah. That's so exciting.
But again, there's that idea though, instead of going, oh, well, yeah, it's going to take me. Kevin, sure, I can do it, but man, it's going to be like, 4 hours of time and it's going to be, whatever. You just don't even, it's like, great idea. Yeah. Let's just do this.
Let's do it.
Let's invest in you and do it and not go, well, we got to add this to the contract. Mm-hmm. We got to add this to the bottom line. And there's a freedom in that.
So there's also the growth that comes with that. So the threshold of qualifying for a legendary project, that's one of the things, people that are trying to grasp it and understand it could say, okay, so tell me like what's really different here. And well, you're still getting a pool and it's still amazing, but there's this intangible part and that's what's different. And some people that are so anchored in reality may not understand that, and that is okay because that's just an indicator that there's someone else perfect for them. Mm-hmm. But that's the engagement. That's to play in our sandbox. That's for us to be able to work with you. We've established what it takes to qualify to be there. And then once you've agreed to that, the rest of it just
and that's what's really interesting.
Fills itself in.
There's a point where it's a financial investment, and can you meet that? And that really is the small part.
Yeah.
Because just because you have the money to do this doesn't mean we want to do it for you.
Right.
You have to qualify in way cooler ways than having enough money to do it.
Yeah.
You have to be cool people. You have to want something very different. If you want custom plastic, which is what we talk about, the mass majority of custom swimming pools today, much like custom homes, are very off-the-shelf custom plastic. They just are acceptable and they're fine, but they're not spectacular. There are some exceptions, but usually it's the untrained eye would say, oh, that's beautiful, that's perfect. But the trained eye that knows what we're talking about, it would be very different for them.
And it's less about the eye, it's more about the feeling.
Sure,
because
the heart.
You can walk in somewhere and it can be beautiful and it can feel hollow and empty, yet visually beautiful. Mm-hmm. Or you can walk in somewhere and it's visually beautiful and you feel I think that's maybe what Bud was trying to put into words. Pictures don't do it justice, because I can look at pictures and they're pretty, but the feeling, and that is the most amazing part, I think, for people visiting each other's legendary pools, is each pool has that space that you walk into and it feels that good. And I know it feels that good because I love going into the yards, and I feel that feeling at different vantage points and at our pools too, with the elevations, and how there's something interesting to look at and feel and experience at every position around the pool.
Well, that goes to composition.
Yeah.
So there's a composition element that pleases your eye. But I think where Bud was going with that, and this is something we don't often talk about, is if you look at the human being and you look at the spirit of the human being, and we talk about auras, and we all have this field around us that really, it extends past our physical, and it's part of our sensory perception, and that's what's being activated. Yeah. So it's not that you're just looking at something going, wow, that's really beautiful. But think about when you walk into a room with a really low ceiling. If it was pitch black and you didn't know the ceiling was low, you would still feel that the ceiling is low. There's something else. So when you have these things that are growing, they're like the elevations and things, you get a feel with that. Or you go inside the bar and the bar is designed so that the ceiling feels a certain way. You feel that. You don't have to look at it and go, oh yeah, this makes me feel a certain way. You just automatically, it wraps its arms around you somehow. Yeah. And we don't talk about that, because in design, how do you put that into words? In meeting with a client and explaining exactly the theming idea and what you're going to do, those are things that we have not to this point been able to describe in words.
Yeah.
But we can take people on an adventure and they will feel it. Well, we know that we can get people to feel that, and that's what Bud was feeling that day.
No, keep going.
No. I mean, it's this whole additional sensory part that we can't say sight, smell, sound. There's just something else there that's pretty hard to describe, but it's like an extension of ourselves feeling the world around us. And that's what I think Bud was feeling that day.
Well, and it's really interesting too. We can't tell you ahead of time what you're getting, because as Lori puts it, like sometimes it's a surprise to us as well. So I know Bud was at the Once Upon a Time outdoor kitchen, which when we sold the project and budgeted for this outdoor kitchen, like there was no plan of what the outdoor kitchen would become. And Bud and Vera have this outdoor kitchen space, and they don't know what it will be. And surprise, we don't. You might have some ideas at this point. I have no idea what it will be.
I'm pretty close to understanding what it'll be, but it will definitely be.
They develop themselves to match the environment that they're in. And that too, I think I've been putting together a lot of the footage from Lazy River. And when you had first got out there, it was a field. And when you started measuring and laying out the pool day one, the day that you take the tape measures out there was literally a basement foundation and a field and a pond. And somehow I know you had built the pool thousands of times in your head before ever getting to that point. So you may have had some idea about this kitchen a long, long time ago. I'm sure you did. Not many of us probably on this planet could do that, could look at this field and develop it with such clarity mentally before ever taking out a tape measure to figure it out.
Well, I think that probably goes to experience. It goes to...
Well, it's more than that.
It's probably that, but there's...
You could find someone with the experience that still can't see that.
Maybe. I don't know. I know that I talk all the time about how I build from 4 feet underground and build up to try to create something. And maybe that's just the way my mind works. That one, I will tell you, that one pushed me.
You could almost call it a super secret superhero skill.
It could be the super sauce, the secret sauce.
Yeah.
That absolutely challenged me, because I had no frame of reference of anything, anywhere, other than now there's a foundation, and we were out there before they actually put the floor of the basement in. And so elevation was kind of this, kind of that. And I remember marking on the foundation wall, this is what the elevation has got to match to the pool. But the pool needs to be farther away from the house than it made sense to originally because of this distance to the pond. And because it was all in theory when we started. Well, the pond's going to be over there. Yeah. The pool's going to be over, the house going to be over here. And really, had I been able to do all of it myself, the house would have been closer to the pond. So we could have made the pool a little bit more intimate. Mm-hmm. But like I told you, I said, I had to push the pool farther away from the house for it to make sense with respect to this negative edge over the lazy river, that to look into the pond, and all those things had to be taken into account. But then what happens when you push it 25 feet, 20 feet farther from the house? What do you do in between? Well, the only natural thing was to fill it in with patio. So that's what we did. And instead of going, well, nickels and dimes and this is and that's, the numbers kind of get astronomical in terms of what the overages could be, what the cost could be. But the beauty and why we built the way we build is that we're not paying subcontractors to do the work. If we were paying for every square foot of concrete via a subcontractor, we'd been $30,000 over budget just in the concrete, just to make this so it worked properly. Mm-hmm. But because we pour our own patios and we do all that work ourselves, it was material cost and some labor, yes, but it was nowhere near that $30,000. But that's what makes sense, to make this all work together so that the composition is right. Otherwise, you can almost picture we would have had to squeeze all of that into a tighter space. If I had done that and I had gone with the proper dimension from the house to the pool and I'd put it there, then we'd have this huge no man's land, which would be nothing but a slope to the beach that would eventually be there. And so I kind of had to play that part in terms of, I need to push it away because I need to take up some of the space, because it needs to all make sense right down to the river, down to the lake. If I don't, we're going to have a whole bunch of, well, that's kind of weird space, which we kind of ended up with an awkward, weird space for a period of time there when at the same time they're building the house, we're building the pool, they have the cabin, the secondary cabin built. And because it was up so high in the air, they decided to put a basement in it. And for whatever reason, it came up 3 or 4 feet higher out of the ground than I would have even imagined it would be. And all of a sudden, here's this thing towering above all of it. And I drove up every day going, oh, while it's a beautiful structure, mm-hmm. It's tearing me apart because I don't know how to make this make sense. And that's when I stacked up the boats along there and created this artificial separation between the pool and that, and we really needed it, because otherwise it would have felt like no man's land. It would have been the pool and the patio and all this no man's land space to this huge structure that went up. But because we have these boats vertically, and they're 10 feet in the air. I mean, they're 14, 15 foot boats that I buried in the ground and we concreted in the ground. Mm-hmm. But that separation made that pool space really intimate, and it made that monstrous tall space make sense. Yeah. Without that, it would have felt like no man's land in there. And I do know that when we first did it, I think they were kind of like, Bud even made a comment to me like, didn't like my log cabin or something. Love your log cabin. I don't like what your log cabin does to dwarf my space that I'm working with. Mm. Love the log cabin. Take that log cabin, put it anywhere in the world. I'd buy it every day long and love it. In that case, I had to come up with a creative solution because there's nothing I could do. It's now there. I need to create some space. And I'll tell you, it's picturesque and perfect now. Magical. No matter what angle, now you have this backdrop of this beautiful building that's broken up by this series of boats and walls and stuff. And you get to walk through all there. A boat as a doorway. And you walk through a boat, to get to that. And so now you have this visual spot from there. It made that space make total sense. Yeah. But I'll tell you, when the building first went in, it hurt me in my soul. Like, how am I going to make this make sense? Because it felt like it was just dwarfing everything. And all it needed was something to make the space make sense.
Yeah.
And once we put those in, and I do know that they must have been going like, oh boy, at first. Of course, they love it now.
Yeah.
I do believe.
Some things take a little getting
It,
used
it
to.
does take a little bit, but when you look at that space now, that's a magical backdrop. That log cabin became a magical backdrop. Before that, before we identified space, it didn't.
Well, and that's what it takes to be a legendary homeowner too. It takes understanding that you'll have a general idea, and it takes understanding that you won't understand a lot of things, and having the faith and trust in our team to do things that make sense, even if they don't at first make sense to you, knowing that eventually it will. And I know that you often have conversations with homeowners after the fact, or something's gone in and like they have a realization and it dawns on them that you or the team very strategically did something, and then they come to realize why, and they're often in awe going, how did you know that? How did you see that coming? How did you anticipate that? And I know that those are always interesting reflections and interesting points when we get to have that happen.
Well, and I think that's living from a place of feeling things versus logically working your way through things. There's time for logic. There's absolutely time for logic. But then there's time for feeling your way through something. And if you live in that world where you can muster that part of you and live through the feeling part, it's magical what comes out. Mm-hmm. It's magical what you can find, what each of us finds in ourselves every day, and something new. Whether it's the artist in you that just one day wakes up and you become this massively cool artist that can paint anything and make anything look cool. She's always, example here is, she's always had a great design idea with quirkiness, and things always look really good. No matter what you've ever decorated, always look good. Mm-hmm. But one day she woke up and she started painting. And her painting wasn't, well, I'm going to methodically learn how to this and that. Instead, it was painting everything and anything and all things and all mediums of paint and all whatever, mm-hmm. and play with it. And her stuff is magical. And that's a lot of those pieces that we're now putting in projects and stuff, yeah. that are that people are going, wow, this is awesome. Yeah. But that's being in touch with that part. And you couldn't logically.
If I didn't know how to paint when we built your pool. But
she
I
probably
do
knew,
now.
but she wasn't connected to it. But now she knows. Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
All right. Well, any other thoughts that we'd want to wrap this up with?
I really think that we're in a really special and unique place that I think that we could train people to find if they were willing to find it. Mm. And I think that there's people out there that really want this part of life and not the business part of life that the most pool company owners, the people that were in the same position I was back when I was making head decisions about can I get people together versus heart decisions. Yeah. I was making head decisions because what if they start talking? What if they find out this, those were the things in my head was what if they start talking about those things, which today is insignificant, but I'm making heart decisions today, not head decisions.
I think more companies and more people will be looking for this, especially with
in
what
today's
2020
day and age. Mm-hmm.
has done to reset our value systems, how we make choices, how homeowners make choices. I think there is a lot of room for people who may have woken up and said, what am I doing with my life? Like, not that we haven't woken up and said, what are we doing with our lives? It's a different way to approach it. You never know. It's a different way.
Yeah. And I think there's probably a massively cool amount of people that want crazy fun stuff. They just don't know where to get it because most pool people, and this could be any industry, but we're talking specifically pools. Most pool people are too afraid to get out of the normal. Get out of the normal and just try cool stuff. Mm-hmm. And
well, we were talking about that today too. I'm working on some lights for a couple of our projects, including Lazy River, Road to Hannah, and the rustic retreat, wilderness retreat. I'm not quite sure what the short title of that one is yet. So I'm working on some lights. And we could take light fixtures, like the ones that are lower to the ground. We could take them out of the box, we could put them together, and we could put them on pools. And that would be so sad.
It'd be custom plastic.
It would be. So instead, we take them out of the boxes.
Brand new. Mess with them.
Nick them up, bump them around in the barn for a while, paint them, and then they fit perfectly. And there's a different relationship with them because you don't expect it to come out of the box being pristine and perfect. Some of the lanterns that I finally figured out the color scheme for the wilderness, it's got a base color and then it's got this overlay color, and that works great because these are reclaimed barn lanterns, and not any one part of it has to be perfect, because if you see something that's a little off, you just spritz a little of this here, spritz a little of that there, and it feels perfect in its imperfection.
Well, again, another conversation to have, and we've probably had it many times, but when someone buys something new out of the box, they expect a certain level of, at least mentally, of, well, it should be pristine, and it should be perfect. It should be as something as that. And yet, what people do not understand is what most of the time what makes people feel something in an environment is not the new and the crisp and the perfect. It's the aged and the thing that has experience. It has energy with it. It has something like it's been through life, like a wall.
Everybody's favorite wall in the whole entire
steampunk we have
headquarters.
Yes,
is this wall.
So you don't create that wall overnight. That's created over
100 years,
120 years of plaster being on it, then plaster falling off of it, and freezing and thawing in the outside and causing deterioration. Yeah. And yet we live in a society in general that thinks that new out of the box is better. Now, you could say from a quality standpoint, maybe it's better, maybe, but from a feeling standpoint, it certainly isn't.
Maybe
Rarely
something
isn't.
Older that was built
We know a lot of older stuff was built a whole lot
has
better.
a bunch of dents in it. Maybe that's better.
Well, and it goes to that old Irish pub. We were building a pool, and then they were doing this Irish pub in their basement.
Oh, yeah.
And the builder knew the right way to do it, but he wouldn't do it that way because he couldn't imagine putting this fortune of wood onto the walls and then taking a hammer and chairs and banging into it and beating up to make it feel a certain way. So he built it pristine. And I know that that's not what that pub feeling that the homeowner wanted was. He thought it was. Really what he wanted was, think about what an authentic pub would feel. And it would feel like the walls have been scratched and bent and worn, and the chairs would be rubbed raw right here and smooth around the corners, and from hundreds of thousands of butts sitting in that chair and holding those hands, and that takes time. And you know what? Over 1,000 people sitting in a chair, you'll wear out the edges and you'll soften it, and that's what the feeling is. Yeah. And
same thing for walls.
All of it.
Yeah.
That did not happen. We didn't do that. All we did was we painted the blue on this plaster that stayed on this wall. That is not manufactured. That's 120 years of life happening. This place, that wall was built in 1883. Yeah. So we're talking almost 140 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
And so that wall looks like that, like it does today. Yeah. And this plaster was put on 140 years ago. And that's why it looks like it does. I couldn't recreate. I can recreate a look-ish like that from scratch, but you can't just create that wall.
Oh, if these walls could talk.
No doubt about it. Amazing. The stories that these walls could tell. And that goes to environment, and that goes to feeling, and that goes to repurposing stuff. If the stuff we use to repurpose could tell us stories about where it was and what it was, it'd be amazing. But if we put it into a project, it can tell its own new story. And that's what we're all about.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us for this story. And we will
see you next time.
We will have some more experiences between now and next time we do one of these. And then we will
talk again.
Chat with you again.